Okay, here we go. We are on to our next chapter of Lois Lowry's The Willoughbys. This is chapter 14, Re-Encountering an Infant. Nanny and the Willoughbys were out for a walk. This was something that old-fashioned families did from time to time to expose themselves to the invigorating fresh air. Nanny had donned her blue cape, which was the official uniform for nannies. "Walk briskly, children," said Nanny, "and swing your arms." And so they did. "Skip if you'd like," said Nanny. "Skipping is very healthful." "What is skipping?" asked Jane. "Yes, what is skipping?" asked the twins. "It's like this, dolts," Tim told them, and he skipped ahead of them, demonstrating. "No more saying the word dolt," Nanny announced. "I dislike it." "What about Dodo?" Jane asked. "Well, let's allow Dodo for now," Nanny said after thinking it over. "If someone does something really stupid, it is permissible to call that person a dodo." "And," she added, looking at Tim, who had returned, "if you think that was skipping, you are a dodo. This is skipping." And she demonstrated, skipping to the corner of the block with her cape flying behind her. She turned and beckoned to the children, and they skipped towards her one by one. Nanny gave some further instructions. "A little more left foot, Tim. No timidly. Go flat out. A. Good job. Much better than before. B." And a pat on the back for Jane, who stumbled and skinned her knee, but heroically was not crying. Now, having walked for several blocks and skipped for the last one, the children found their way on a familiar street. They had not been back to the street since the day they had trudged here, hauling a wagon containing a basket with a baby in it. Tim nudged Barnaby A. and nodded meaningfully towards the mansion that loomed ahead. Both of the twins gave nervous glances, but looked away and concentrated on remarks about the quality of the asphalt in the street and a particularly odd-shaped cloud in the sky. Jane fell silent and had a sad look. She had liked the baby, actually, though when its hair was chopped, she had found it homely. From time to time, she had missed it and wondered about it. Nanny skipped ahead, not noticing that a hush had fallen upon the children. "The windows are repaired," Barnaby B. pointed out in a whisper. "And the cat has been fed," his twin noticed. "It was thin before, and now it's pudgy." "Someone has mowed the lawn," Tim observed. "Shh," Jane said suddenly. "I hear a giggle." They stood still, the four of them, and after a moment Nanny returned. She had skipped the entire length of the block, assuming the children were behind her, and now she came back to see where they had stopped. "The important thing in terms of fresh air intake," Nanny said to them, "is continuity. If you stop, you lose your continuity. Why ever are you standing like dodos? You are breathing stagnant air." The children shifted their feet, but didn't reply. Tim began to hum a bit, and the twins stared at the pavement. "What's that sound?" Nanny asked suddenly. "I'm just humming the Battle Hymn of the Republic," Tim explained. "I try to do it in its entirety twice a day. Usually no one hears me, and sometimes I do it in the bathroom if it is possible to hum while brushing one's teeth." No. I meant that sound." Nanny held up one finger to silence them, and now they could hear all the delicious giggles from the porch of the mansion. I think we should go home," Barnaby A. said nervously. Yeah, isn't it lunchtime? Weren't you planning Vicosi for lunch, Nanny?" asked Barnaby B. "Let's skip home," suggested Tim. He did a few tentative moves with his feet and his arms. "It's a very sweet sound," Jane said, glancing at Addie. "It's a baby on the porch of that mansion. Let's go look. I believe That is quite against the law to enter a private gate, cross a private walk, and ascend the steps of a private porch. I think we might be very well be arrested, Nanny, if we investigate this any further. Now let's leave at once. 50 points off anyone who does not leave immediately, Tim announced. Nonsense. You stopped that silly point thing weeks ago. Come, close the gate behind you in case there is a dog confined in the yard. I once knew someone whose spaniel fled when a gate was left open and was never seen again, and 3 members of the family died of grief. Jane took Nanny's hand and followed her through the gate. I do love babies, Jane confided. I've always wanted one. I remember when we found... Tim interrupted her. I don't believe people die of grief, he muttered. He came through the gate and latched it behind him. Only the twins remained on the sidewalk looking nervous. Yes, they do, Nanny told him. They waste away. I have known at least 12 people who have died from grief. It's a terrible way to go. It is indeed, a loud voice suddenly said. All of them, even Nanny, jumped. A large man with a thick mustache had appeared suddenly through a door and opened onto the porch. He was wearing a tweed jacket and a polka-dot bow tie, and he was carrying a box of cookies. I myself came very close to dying of grief not long ago, he announced. How do you do? I am Commander Melanoff. What are you doing on my porch? Have a ginger cookie? Nanny took one. We heard a lovely giggle from your porch and we came to investigate. I have learned, of course, over the course of my many years, that it is a bad idea, usually, to investigate piteous weeping, but always a fine thing to look into a giggle. She bit into the cookie. Delicious, she said. Twins, she called to the other side of the fence. There are cookies. Timidly, the 2 Barnabys came through the gate and approached the porch. How do you do, and thank you for the ginger cookie, Nanny said, extending her hand, which Commander shook. I am sorry to hear you almost died of grief. How have you recovered? I'm somewhat better, he replied. He passed the box of cookies around to the children. My source of solace has been this lovely infant. He walked towards the end of the large porch where a grinning baby with curly hair stood, grasping the side of her playpen, and they followed him. It's not the same baby, Jane whispered to Tim. Its hair isn't stubbly. It grew, you dolt, since Mother chopped it off. Tim looked nervously towards Nanny to see if she had heard the word dolt, which she had so recently forbidden. But she was leaning over the baby, smiling and talking in a baby-like voice. What's your daughter's name, Commander? She asked. Oh, I see. Ruth. Sweet monogram. Yes, her name is Ruth, but she is not my daughter. She is my, ward. Oh, lovely, said Nanny. You are an old-fashioned family like us. We are 4 worthy orphans with a no-nonsense nanny. Like Mary Poppins, suggested the man with a pleased look of recognition. Not one bit like that fly-by-night woman, Nanny said with a sniff. It almost gives me diabetes to think of her, all those disgusting spoonfuls of sugar. None of that for me. I am simply competent, and a professional nanny. And you are let me think, a bereaved benefactor, suggested the commander. Exactly. A bereaved benefactor with a ward, like the uncle in The Secret Garden. Oh, what was his name? Oh yes, Archibald Craven. Oh my, no, not one bit like the ill-tempered scoundrel of an uncle. I am a simple, well-to-do widower who happened to find a baby on my doorstep. We are both wonderfully old-fashioned, aren't we? Hello, baby Ruth. Nanny turned back to the baby and said in a sweet, high-pitched voice, Aren't you fortunate to have found... She hesitated. What does she call you? She doesn't speak yet, but I've been a bit worried about the question of what she will call me. I do like the sound of Papa. he said, and then paused and dabbed his eyes with the handkerchief. But brings back sad memories, Nanny asked sympathetically. Indeed. Well, there is time, children. She turned to the 4 Willoughbys. This is baby Ruth. Give her a ginger snap, she directed them. They're not too spicy, are they, Commander? An infant this age shouldn't have spicy food. No, he said. They're quite bland. She likes them. But thank you for alerting me to that. I am new to this, and sometimes it is hard to know what's proper. I've been thinking, actually, about looking for a nanny. And I don't suppose... He gave her a questioning look. She's ours, said Barnaby A. in an outraged tone. And we're orphans. Or at least almost orphans, so we need her. We must go now, said his twin. It's almost time for dinner. We haven't even had lunch yet, Bee, Nanny pointed out. I mean the cat... I mean the cat's dinner. It's almost time for our cat's dinner. The children moved toward the porch steps. Well, said Nanny to the commander, it was lovely to meet you. But the children seem eager to move on, so perhaps our paths will cross again. Goodbye to you, Commander Melinoff. And bye-bye to you as well, baby Ruth, she said to the infant, who waved back with a chubby hand. Wait, I don't know your names, Commander Melinoff said suddenly, just as Nanny was latching the gate behind her. The children were halfway down the street. I'm just Nanny, she called back. The children are Tim, A, B, and Jane. A and B, how odd. They're twins, Nanny explained. I see. He replied that though he didn't. They are all Willoughbys. He nodded. Goodbye, then, he called. He turned to the playpen and to Ruth because it was time to take her inside for an afternoon nap. But he had a puzzled look on his face. Willoughby, he thought. There was something vaguely familiar about the name.